Really happy to have Chris Strom, and he is a really accomplished intelligence operations individual. Came highly recommended by one of our other guests, Kevin Young. Did a tour, like a significant tour, 20 years, I guess, in New York.
Yes, sir.
And also served in the Marine Corps and served overseas. I think it's really cool, your story. I can't wait for some of the other people to hear it. I'm really glad that you're here, and just looking forward to getting into your story.
I appreciate that very much, Juette. Thanks so much for having me. And before we get started, I just want to give you a challenge coin from the NYPD Sergeants Benevolent Association. Let's go.
Will this get me out of a ticket in New York?
It might.
Or it might give me.
It depends. It depends on how old or how.
If it's the state police, they probably will give me.
Probably not with the state police, but maybe so with the.
No, I really appreciate that. That is super, super cool. I think y'all are the gold standard. You really are. New York is the gold standard. Can't say much about your candidate for mayor, but I mean, we'll talk about that more later.
Yes, sir.
So let's just talk a little bit about where you were born, just a little bit on your background, and then just work from there.
Yeah, sure. I grew up on Long Island, and like a lot of kids, parents got divorced when I was very young. I ended up living with my grandparents, who were amazing people and gave me a great moral compass and religious foundation. And my dad wasn't really involved in my life, and I'm not saying that because I want sympathy. I'm just trying to paint a picture of what right. life was. I was with my grandparents, and they were very, very strict, but they were beautiful, loving people, and gave me structure in life. And then at some point in time, my mom had remarried an individual, and he had 7 kids. So there was 3 of us and 7 of them, and
that's a full house.
It became like an insane asylum, and that marriage did not last. And I ended up back with my grandfather. My grandmother had since passed away, and I was starting to get into trouble. I didn't really have much direction in my life, and I knew if I didn't join the Marine Corps or do something positive with my life, it was only a matter of time. The writing was on the wall. I was hating going to school. I was kind of hating my life. And I can remember as a young kid going to this one particular shopping mall, and they had like a freestanding building where they had a recruiting station. It was the Marines. And it was funny enough that you would get off the bus, and it was right there as soon as you got off the bus. So you could not miss them.
You couldn't miss it.
So they had like a captive audience of young people like myself getting off there. And I remember how sharp they looked. And this is long before they had like social media and commercials and ad campaigns to kind of entice you. Everything was kind of like, hey, what do you come on over here, young man, and they introduced yourself. And so at 17, I decided to join the Marine Corps. My parents, my dad and my mom, had to sign off and give me permission. And I arrived in Paris Island, I think it was May of 1978. And
so never hot in Paris Island.
Oh my gosh. It is a whole different kind of like
New York to South Carolina.
Swampy hot, really, really, really humid type of thing. And they have all these movies and videos of people getting on the yellow footprints, and then the screaming just started.
So as soon as those feet touch down on the yellow footprints, you're like, here we go.
And then the whole indoctrination process and yelling and screaming. And so I'm sitting there laying in bed, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I'm going to make this. I'm 17, and I'm like terrified. And there's a bunch of other people there that are much older than me, and some are from the East Coast, some are from the West Coast, some are from Middle America. And I think if I remember right, we had about roughly 40 some odd people. And when we started the platoon, when we finally started doing all the things that you have to do, and I think we only graduated just shy of 30 people. Okay. So there was a lot of attrition. And each week it was like somebody else was leaving or getting left back. And I kind of remember that whole psychological thing. But
so quick question. I know that I don't know what it's like. I obviously don't know what it's like in the Marine Corps, but I remember our 0 day when we went downrange with the Army. I remember laying in bed, similar to what you're talking about. Like we just got smoked. We had, did they have cattle trucks back then? Where they
did.
Yep, cattle trucks. And like everybody's packed in there. Next thing you know, the dude that's facing you is ripped out of the back of the truck, and then the screaming and yelling begins. But that night, I remember hearing a bunch of grown men going like, and I was like, man, this sucks. I was like, I don't think I'm going to survive it. But did y'all do the countdown? 20 days in a wake up, 30 or whatever.
What was happening was because we did not have enough people initially to start. Like we had to wait for
So
Our
you were in the
platoon-
reception station just getting smoked every day?
Yeah, every day.
Okay.
So like the first 2 weeks didn't count because our platoon hadn't filled up, and then there was
So you didn't even have a graduation date until
No.
you went down range?
No,
Okay.
we did not. We did not have a graduation date. So, and it was funny. So, to your point, they would actually say, "How do you feel today, recruits?" You know, and sir, great, sir. They go, good, because this day didn't count either, like that. And they just kept like laying it on, like, you know, you haven't even begun the process,
Yeah,
basically.
it sucks, but you haven't really started.
Yeah. So we'll let you know when your first day is.
So where were you assigned first after you graduated?
I went to Millington, Tennessee for aviation school, my A school.
Okay.
And I got picked up for what they call aviation ordnance.
Okay.
And from there, I got my specialty, and I got assigned to HMA 269, which is Helicopter Marine Attack Squadron in New River, North Carolina.
Okay.
Not far from Campbell's June, down the road, actually, from Campbell's June.
Okay.
And I spent the rest of my time there, and I worked on the Cobra helicopters, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got to fly every once in a while. I got to get some flight time in the front seat. But I also did 16 months at sea because it's a deployable squadron. So
you were on a boat.
was
What do they call it? I'm sorry to all the Navy people. It's a ship. Right?
it's a ship, I guess.
It's a ship.
Yeah.
So you were stuck on a ship for how long?
I think the first time I went out was a little over 6 months, and I think the second time was like 8 months because something had happened in Algeria, and we were basically floating around there just in case some kind of hostilities broke out. And then there was an earthquake in Tunisia, so they wanted us there in case there was going to be like a medevac.
How was the food in the Navy?
The food was actually pretty good.
Pretty good?
I have to say. I mean, you know,
No complaint.
yeah, there weren't too many skinny sailors, if I remember right. So, I mean, there was food and plenty of it if you wanted it.
Okay.
And, it was, but I'll tell you what, like the living conditions, you know, you're literally, if you have any kind of claustrophobic issues or don't like people bumping into you or touching you, I mean, there's not enough room to pass each other between the bunks.
Right.
There's probably, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 inches above your head from the bunk above you. And if you're on the top bunk and you have to come down and you're on the bottom bunk, you know, it's like.
How high? Is it 2 bunks or
I
is
think
it
it's
more?
4.
4?
If I remember, you have the bottom one, the second, third, and fourth. And if you're on the 4th bunk, you have to climb down. And depending on where you are in that food chain, you're getting woken up each time the guy goes up and down.
So you want the top bunk? Even I don't know, or maybe 3. Is 3 the premium?
I guess probably so, yeah, because you might be able to skip that because it's not that much of a separation between the two to kind of climb yourself out. But
yeah, number 4 is not stepping on you coming out.
Yeah,
but 1 or 2 sucks.
I was on the first ship I was on was the Iwo Jima. I think they decommissioned it. It's probably a museum at this point, but they had the old school bunks where it was basically almost like with the like your beach chair, like the slats of like fabric going both ways, and just a rubber mattress on top of that. So I mean, it was very, 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 very close.
Well, those boats don't move that much at sea either, do they?
Oh no.
It's just like just rock.
It's like Carnival Cruise. You know, it's very smooth, very you know.
And no smell of diesel fuel or anything.
No, nothing like
beautiful.
that. Or jet fuel with planes taking off, and it's very quiet.
Yeah.
You know, when they say lights out, everybody's very
quiet. Nobody, nothing.
You don't hear
nobody's
any
flying after dark.
No hum of engines, no anything. It's very peaceful.
So you get out of the Marine Corps. What happens then?
I ended up doing a couple of different jobs, and I always knew I wanted to be a cop. So I applied for the NYPD.
Okay.
Filled out all the paperwork, did the application process, and I got called in January of '87 to go into the academy. There was a couple of detours along the way, but I remember going to the academy, and at this point in time, I'm living back on Long Island.
Okay.
And I'm commuting in, and
are you commuting in by car?
By car.
Okay.
And it's just so people can't even imagine this, depending on their age. We actually had to throw quarters into a basket to get through the Midtown Tunnel. That's how I would get in.
Right.
Now it's all easy pass and you just drive. But if you can imagine, 100,000 people and there's 6 lanes of traffic trying to go into Lower Manhattan, because that's where the academy was at the time, was on West 20th Street and 2nd Avenue. You got online, even though that was the faster way, as opposed to actually handing somebody money. And but if a couple of times what was so funny about it was, you would throw the money and sometimes it would bounce one of the coins would bounce out, and so the gate would come down midway as you're trying to transgress through it.
And I know people in New York are fairly patient. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, horn honking is down to an art form. Down,
right.
You know what I
you
mean?
can probably sing a song with the horn.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, you're holding us all up. What the heck, and things like that.
Right. So you go to the academy. How many people did you have in the academy?
1,000.
Oh.
So they did split shifts. So you would do a week of days and then a week of nights, and then the same thing with the other 500 people. So we would go in the morning, then there would be an afternoon shift that came in at like 3 to 11. I think we went 7 to 3, something like that. And then we would switch, and that went on for, I think, about 6 months.
And when y'all graduate, if I'm understanding right, I talked to somebody that went to NYPD. Did they do it at the where did they do graduation at?
Sometimes at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I mean, because you could imagine if you
that
have
many people,
1,000 people, and you multiply that times family members and children and things like that, you could easily have 25, 30,000 people.
But that is one thing about the PD in New York. Like, they go big, don't they, on celebrations and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're very family oriented, and there's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of colloquialisms and things that that's, I think, separate and apart onto the NYPD.
So your first assignment, where were you assigned?
I was in Coney Island, Brooklyn.
So what goes on in
precinct? Well, Coney Island, Brooklyn is an interesting place because they have a boardwalk.
Okay. So you're a beach cop.
I was kind of like a beach. Well, it's so the NYPD training, like, they divided it all up to those, what they call neighborhood stabilization units. So it's called an NSU. So that's just where I happen to be in Brooklyn. But there's different training units. There's ones in Queens, there's ones in the Bronx and Manhattan, obviously. But I just happened to get Brooklyn. But the boardwalk was part of it. But then there was other residential areas and commercial businesses and things like that. But a lot of days when you weren't doing field training with the sergeant, that would be my foot post on the boardwalk.
Okay.
So I'm like, this is pretty cool.
This
isn't bad. You know what I mean? But, you're so new and you don't really have any kind of, wherewithal, like, you know the basics of police work, but you're really not a cop. You're still in training. You need somebody to kind of...
You need somebody to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you get that's your first assignment. Where do you go from there?
From there, I went to the 101 precinct in Queens, and I was there for 13 years.
Okay.
And it is the most southern precinct and most eastern precinct. So it bordered up on Nassau County, which worked out well because I eventually met my wife, and I would literally go over the Atlantic Beach Bridge and be home in time to watch the Dave Letterman monologue, after I got off at 11:30.
Because did y'all work 12-hour shifts? Or?
We worked 8 hours and 35.
Okay.
So there's three shifts. And then initially when I came on the job, we call it the job. That's one of the things that the NYPD calls police work, the job.
Right.
We would do rotating shifts. So you do like a week of days, a week of nights, and then every 8th week or 7th week or 8th week, you would do a midnight shift, which everybody hated. Nobody wanted to do it.
But I would think that New York stays busy 24/7.
Oh my God. Well, you have to remember now, this is 1987, so the crack war is raging. It is like out of the chain violence in the street, people being shot. Not that that's not happening today, but it was happening then.
It's kind of a shock to everybody's system.
And the level of violence and the crimes associated with the property crimes, the homicides. I can remember working in the 101 precinct, and this is the cop mentality, the macabre sense of humor. It got to the point we had 19 homicides in 1 year. So my partner at the time was this fellow named Jimmy Halley, and we were first on the scene for 7 out of the 19. That's how violent and how bad it was.
Right.
And it got to the point where we would flip a coin to see who would have to go to the morgue the next day to identify the body. So here we are. It's New Year's Eve. I'll never forget this. I can't remember what year it is. I think it was before I had met my wife, or soon before I met my wife. And there's a homicide, and it's in the breezeway of this apartment building. And we get there, and we find the guy, and he's laying face down. We figure he's shot or dead or whatever like that. We roll him over. Turned out he was shot in the face, but the bullet didn't exit out of his skull.
Okay.
And so we flip the coin. Who's going to have to go? Now it's New Year's Eve, right? Everybody this is a 4 to 12. Everybody wants to go somewhere other than being here and doing police work,
right?
Or especially getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning the
next morning to be at the
meet the coroner to identify the body. And so I lost the coin toss.
So New Year's Eve was not good that year.
New Year's Eve was not good that year. So
wow. So you go through any interesting patrol stories before we go into your intel work?
I mean, I loved patrol. I was active. I did a lot of, there was a lot of street robberies. I was like very good at that type of thing. Like, and I was also good with stolen cars and identifying, because back in the day, they were stealing Hondas and Toyotas. Not that they aren't now, but they were stealing them very frequently, and they would re-VIN or retag the car. So I had an eye for something like that, and I liked that.
So there were certain things that you looked at, and you.
Oh yeah. Like I knew right away. Like was a smoke show, that the smoke screen rather, that this car is not legit, even though he has a piece of paper that says it's legally registered and everything like that. And through some investigation and some other things, you would find.
You would tie it back up.
Yeah, it was tagged.
Do any of them tie to anything major that you worked from patrol to kind of push you towards intel?
Well, yeah, a lot of them were related to like chop shops. So chop shop, somebody would steal. They put an order in, literally put in a checklist for a car they wanted to steal.
This is what I need. Yeah.
And they would steal the car. Then they would take the car, and they would take a salvage car and take the VIN from that car and put it back on this car. And of course, if it's done really well, then you can't tell. But now it's like it's almost impossible to redo that. But this is back in the 80s and 90s, so the technology is not what it was, what it is today. So it wasn't that hard.
That's how you piece it together.
Yeah.
So you get done with patrol. Talk about going into the intel unit.
Well, I ended up taking the sergeant's test, and I get promoted to sergeant, and they send me to the 7-6 precinct, which probably doesn't mean much for your audience, but where I am geographically in terms of where I live and my commute to the 101 precinct, that was probably a 7-mile commute. This is a 29-mile or 28-mile.
But not 29 miles in the country.
No. And so my commute would take anywhere from an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes to go to work. Coming home, not so much. It wasn't that bad. And I get to the 7-6 precinct. I've been in Queens now for 13 years.
Okay.
And now I'm in Brooklyn, and I don't know anything about Brooklyn. I used to drive through Brooklyn, like Atlantic Avenue, on the 7-5 precinct with the windows up, and just try and get through it as fast as possible.
Right.
And then Manhattan I had even less familiarity with, and then I end up working in this great precinct, the 7-6 precinct, and there was a narcotics unit within that precinct. Okay. And apparently the guy that was running the unit, the sergeant, he was having some family issues. And the captain had approached me and said, hey, because I had just come from a robbery unit. I was in a robbery unit for 4 years. And he said, would you mind taking this over? And I said, well, I don't mind taking it over, but I said, let me discuss it with my wife. And basically I was trying to borrow time. So I approached the sergeant that was running the unit. I'm like, hey, look, the captain just asked me to take over this unit. I don't know what's going on. I go, I'll just tell him I'm not interested. I'm not here to step on anybody's toes or anything like that. And he said, no, take it. He goes, I would appreciate it. So from that, I inherit this team of the most amazing people, beautiful, smart, like the United Nations, who's Puerto Rican, who's Dominican, who's Jewish, who's Polish,
right,
who's Italian. And we were going out there and we were just tearing it up. I mean, literally.
Still crack, though.
Well, now I'm in the Red Hook houses and the Gowanus houses, and they were slinging crack, but not so much crack anymore. Now it's heroin.
Okay.
It had changed over. There was an evolution. I think heroin.
Transition.
Yeah. So it was heroin and cocaine for the most part. So we're doing the same thing like traditional police work. We're doing field observation, picking off the buyers and then picking the seller off, flipping them and doing search warrants and things like that. And then 9/11 had happened. So we're again in the precinct in the 7-6. So geographically, just for context, when you go down Atlantic Avenue, which is like the northern boundary of the 7-6 precinct, you're at the East River. So if you look across the East River, you're looking at the trade centers, and you're looking at the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. And if you look to your left, you see the Statue of Liberty. So that's kind of like where I am. But one of the things that connects Brooklyn with Lower Manhattan is the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Okay. So you drive through that tunnel, and when you come up, you're facing the trade center, the trade towers. So when 9/11 happened, I had changed my tour, and I'm working with my Detective Ginger, and I changed my tour to do a day tour. And she said, I want to do it too, whatever. Do you mind if I work? And I said, no, you could be my driver, whatever. So we went into a restaurant to get coffee, and we turned our radios down because it was, we're in plain clothes. We're trying not to, disturb people, and we're going to get it to go, right?
Right.
So we come out, turn the radio back up, and now I'm seeing the trade. I can see right in front of me the trade set is on fire, the One Trade Center.
Okay.
And I turned the radio up, and the radio is going insane. So I parked on Columbia and Congress Street, and I'm literally on the phone with my wife, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. The trade center's on fire. She goes, I see it, because my wife worked in the hospital. Okay. And she goes, I see it. We have the TV on like that. And with that, the second plane literally flies past me, in front of me, and hits the second tower, the south tower. And the explosion was such that it literally shook the car, the shock wave. So I was like, listen, I got to go. So from that, I was there for 3 days, and then I finally, go home. But my primary station initially was at the Battery Tunnel, which I was talking about before. So now what happened is, because of the building and all the madness, the people are trapped in the tunnel. They can't go out. They can't get in. They can't get out on both tubes, the inbound and the outbound. And then when the tower fell, the ventilation pipes, or the ventilation fans rather, that pull the exhaust out of the tunnel so that people don't get, carbon monoxide, is now sucking in all the dust and debris. So now there's no lights. These people are
panicked.
They're panicked. We have tow trucks coming, and they're trying to create a lane so that emergency vehicles can get in, as opposed to trying to go up to the Brooklyn Bridge and then come back south on the FDR. And it was like, so that's what we were doing. So I was triaging people. Ambulances were there, tow trucks were there, and finally we get a lane cleared so that the fire trucks can get in there. But by that point, it was too late.
Everything was done.
It was too late. It was just crazy. From that, they were looking for people to go into the intelligence division. I didn't want to leave my narcotics unit, but the backstory to that was my son had gotten really, really sick with RSV, and he spent 9 days in the NICU unit, but there was going to be some recovery time with him. So the captain that put me in the narcotics unit, he had gotten transferred, and there was a new captain, and now he's asking me to take the field intelligence officer spot. And I don't want to leave the narcotics team, and I don't want to go.
Because that was good work, and you were good at it, and you had a good team.
And I had a great team, and I have steady days off, and I'm very comfortable on it. Nobody really likes change. But that captain had gotten me off for 8 weeks full pay to be home with my son.
So you kind of owed him.
So I definitely owed him big time. His name is, I don't know if he's still on the job. His name is David Barrera, an amazing human being.
Right.
And so I said, for you, boss, anything. And he goes, look, if it doesn't work out and you don't like it, he goes, I'll give you a soft landing. You come work for me in this other precinct that he had gotten assigned to as the CO. So I go in there, and it's like the same thing all over again. Now I know even less, because I was a street guy for 13 years. I was in the street. I was not an inside guy.
But you already knew how to talk to people. You already knew how to pull information. It's just using their model to collect it.
Yeah, but again, all unfamiliar faces and starting all over again. And these are some very smart people, and these are all seasoned detectives that I'm working with. And
you're their supervisor.
And I'm supposed to tell them what to do, but in reality, they were telling me what to do. They were very gracious about it, and amazing human beings, and super smart people. So I get in there, and the same kind of thing happened. We all become like a family, and we bond together, and we start doing investigations, and it's starting to take off. I get involved in that a double homicide, and we kind of solved that case, and then the U.S. Attorney's Office ends up taking over the case. But the case in and of itself was a pretty amazing case.
Homicide. What was unique about that the feds wanted to take it?
It was a mob hit. It was actually a drive-by. Some guy on a motorcycle went up to a social club in the 7-6 precinct, and they pulled out a gun, went into the social club, and killed 2 people, but nobody else. These 2 specific people.
Right. And
it had remained unsolved for about 7 years, and so I ended up because I had been working in the 7-6 precinct and had developed a reputation. Somebody had come in and wanted to give me information about it, and then from that we started doing some.
But we're not talking about somebody like going across the street. We're talking about somebody having to make that same distance that you had to make to get to you. but they remembered you and knew where you were.
Apparently I must have treated them right, as opposed to how I was initially when I was a cop, where I didn't treat people as nice as I probably should have. And
but the system, we discussed that earlier, the system wasn't set up for like having a pleasant interaction with somebody or even to gather information, because you were on a clock and you were dependent on an outside entity to approve your charges.
Yeah, that was definitely the biggest part of it. There was no, if there was any mentoring at all, the mentoring was what you got. So if you were a bad communicator and that was your partner, then you're probably going to be a bad communicator too, because you're kind of like learning from each other.
Right.
And until somebody kind of like takes you by the hand, or you realize my way is not working. And, again, I did 4 years.
Somebody else is working.
I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. So I had convinced myself that I was the smartest person in the room.
Right.
I legitimately thought that, what I mean? And nobody was going to be able to tell me differently or teach me. I was very hard headed. And, but eventually I matured a little bit, and I started seeing different people, the way they interacted with people and their communication skills. And I said, I want to be like that guy. And one of the guys who I'm still in touch with this day, I see him at least once or twice a year in New York for dinner, is this friend of mine, Tommy Dades, who is an amazing, gifted detective and knows more about Italian organized crime than any detective in the world. He is the Google encyclopedia of Italian organized crime.
So what was unique about him? I know you were talking about it earlier, and I think it's kind of cool, like when you work different assignments inside of a department. So he was in organized crime. So everybody had a nickname, right?
Yeah. And so his name was Tommy White Shoes. He always wore white sneakers, and they were like and his hair was always perfect, and he always wore like T-shirts. And he's probably one of the most unassuming, humble people you'd ever meet, but the nicest guy.
But just an encyclopedia of information.
He grew up like something out of a movie. Okay. Surrounded by all these Italian social clubs in Marine Park, Brooklyn, which was notorious at the time for organized crime and business.
So he grew up with it.
He is personal friends with Sammy the Bull Gravano, if that gives you any kind of context.
So he knows the people.
He knows the people. But what's so amazing about him is that he had, and this is what I learned from him, many things, but one of the most important things I learned from him is that don't overpromise and underdeliver. If you give somebody your word, you're going to do something. I don't care what it is.
Do it.
You have to do it. And he prided himself on that. And so he had a reputation where people in that realm, in that organization, knew that, yeah, Tommy arrested me, but you know what? He treated me right. And he did make any consideration that I got or asked for, he made it known, and he did his best to make that happen.
So he kept his side of the bargain. If they provided information, he kept his side.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about how that intelligence cycle works for you. Somebody comes to another precinct and says, hey, I have information on a 7-year-old homicide. I think one of the things that we do in law enforcement, sometimes we dismiss people outright. Well, they're this, they're that. But you didn't do that, and it worked out well. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it takes time. Like if you develop a reputation as somebody that, like my friend Tommy, he was amazing. They write books about he's just on all kinds of different talk shows. When you develop that reputation, it's not overnight. So if you were the bad cop, like I was the bad cop, or I should say bad cop, like bad, like did bad things, but I just was a bad communicator.
Right.
When you start to develop this professional reputation, just like you and I are talking about cops in the cop world, or we go to a wedding and we, hey, what's going on or whatever. The bad guys are doing the same thing, especially if they're in jail, because they have nothing else to do.
Right.
But talk about their circumstances and commiserate on their misery of why they're there.
Right.
But similarly, they talk about cops too, and they're like, oh, I knew that guy, whatever.
He's straight shooter.
He's a straight shooter, and he did right.
I mean, I did wrong, but like he held me accountable for what I did wrong, but he didn't come to, like, it was a measured response from you. Like you did what you needed to do, but you treated him like a human being. And
yes, and moreover than that, if there was something you could do, in other words, if they wanted something, they wanted to see if you could help them out and work off their time. you would say to them, I don't know if I can do that. Let me speak to the district attorney or the Commonwealth attorney and see what they do. And then say, but I will get back to you either way, regardless of what their decision is.
I think that's one of the coolest things about the federal system, I think, is once they're caught, they have a opportunity to come in there, and it's the first step for them to go through it is acceptance of responsibility. They have to accept what you've charged them with, and then they can get substantial assistance. And so I think, like, to me, that is a starting point for any once you make an arrest, like your whole career was moving your way up, like taking the next rung. Talk about that from your standpoint. You have a heroin addict that comes in and tells you information about a 7-year-old homicide. Most people are going to go, okay, yeah, that's 7 years ago. A lot of really smart people worked this case and never got anywhere. How is it different for you? Well,
like I said, I had gone through like a maturation process, and I learned how to be a better communicator. And when I met this guy, he was a heroin addict. And so obviously, you go through a vetting process, and you want to, do some very small level things to see if he's true. But when he said that about the homicide, he knew intimate details more than what I knew. So for example, that case was when he expressed that he knew about a 7-year-old homicide.
You're like,
I didn't even know about the homicide.
It's not like
I'm only here a year. So this is like old news.
Right.
So you have to.
It was important to somebody, but it wasn't on your radar.
Right, exactly. So when I did a little bit of digging, it's one of these things where I'm trying to verify what he knew. So I got a hold of the files from that case, and I spoke to one of the detectives that was involved in the case, not the lead detective. And then from there, you realize I need information from you so I can ask him another question, so I can go through this vetting process, because, for all I know, he's just another guy that read it in the newspaper.
Right.
Because I don't know enough intimate details. I don't have fidelity on this particular case. So that's kind of like how things start to go along. And then it becomes like, well, the guy that's responsible for it is this one guy. So he can't get the actual firsthand account. He has hearsay information, but we need firsthand account. Well, how are you going to get firsthand account? Well, you got to move up the food chain.
Okay.
You got to get the next guy that can give you the next guy that can give you the guy that ordered the hit.
But he knew who was involved.
Everybody knew on the street. Everybody kind of knew.
So at that point, it's pretty much targeting. At that point, it's like, okay, here's the flow chart of here's the person at the top, here's the person that pulled the trigger, or the persons that pulled the trigger, and these are components to it. It's like picking fruit, low hanging fruit, and feed yourself on the way up.
Right, because we needed the guy. Not so much. The trigger guy would be nice, but at the end of the day, the trigger guy still has to give you the guy that
put it out.
Right. And so it's a whole. And again, the trigger guy, is he still alive, or did they kill the trigger guy?
Right.
Because if he's dead, he can't really tell you who told him to do it.
Right.
So, and of course, this is all things I did not know about the case, but we eventually learned from the case, and so we ended up moving. The investigation moved along, but again, getting back to the intel cycle,
right?
If you have poor communication skills, if you can't engage this person and get him to trust you and believe you, again, you're selling yourself to this person. People are like, I'm not going to lower myself to talk to a heroin addict. Well, then maybe you should go back to patrol.
Right. No, you're
maybe
exactly
you should
right.
just write tickets, or do some other job that is technically police work, because this is real police work.
Right.
And not everybody can do it. And I'm not saying that I'm the best at it, but I will say that I work with some of the best people.
No, that's exactly right. I
They
think
showed
that's
me.
one of the coolest things about having this podcast is bringing people. Like, I feel like my story is pretty good, but like I've got dudes coming on here like you that like have this significant wealth of information, and you're saying the same thing everyone else is saying, is like, I work with some really good dudes, and it does seem to wear off, like wear on to other people. And I think that's what's cool about it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
so your case, you work through the case, and then what happens? So,
well, they end up reassigning me from that case. They moved me from the precinct into now the what they call the leads desk. So
Okay.
if you can imagine, there's the JTTF, and then
and that's the joint terrorism.
that's the
task
joint
force,
terrorism. So
and then those were created after 9/11, correct?
yes, correct.
And
Correct.
just explain that real quick. What's the concept of that?
Well, we did not have our eye on the ball in terms of counterterrorism, and so basically that's how the expansion of the NYPD Intelligence Division came about. But prior to 9/11, even the NYPD Intelligence Division, which was relatively small at the time, was focused on criminal. They were not focused on counterterrorism. Well, after 9/11, Ray Kelly came in and said, yeah, whatever the FBI is doing, they suck at it. So we have to take ownership of this project. And so he expanded.
Because it's your city.
Yeah, well, and we had been attacked twice. We had attacked in 93, where they tried to take the towers down, and the FBI withheld information. I could spend a whole hour on your show talking about the missteps that were made and point directly to who was at fault. But again, that doesn't really serve any purpose at this point.
It's a reoccurring problem.
It's a reoccurring problem.
If you want good information, you're going to have to get out there and get it yourself.
And you need to share the information.
Right.
Which is still compartmentalized to this day. And anyone that wants to say differently is not really being
not living in the world that you operate
in. They're not being honest. Again, it sounds good in theory, but it's not. And so there's always this kind of fiefdom turf battles that go on.
So after 9/11, you have the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, but NYPD did something that was exceptional. And what did they do?
Well, they first of all, they expanded it. That's how I ended up going in there. I didn't even really know much about the intelligence division. And they brought in a guy named David Cohen, who was a 36-year CIA guy. And he said, this is how we're going to look at counterterrorism now. And some of the things that he did and some of the programs he brought about were very controversial. And it ended up evolving around a thing called the Handshoe Law, because one of the things that we were doing that we weren't doing is we were monitoring all kinds of events, political, fun events, small events, religious events. They had people in mosques. They had people in cafes, and we were primarily looking at people of Middle Eastern descent and Muslims. And people said, well, why would you do that? I'm like, well, I don't know. If there's a robbery pattern and we're looking for Asian guys stealing Toyota Camrys, that's who we're looking for.
Right.
So the primary offenders were these people. And if people wanted to dismiss that, well, we don't profile, we profile every day. Otherwise, if we didn't profile.
Right.
And profile is such a nasty word, but it's analytics.
Okay.
It's analytics that drive.
It's verbiage, really.
That's really all it is. And so that's one of the things that they did. One of the other things they did was.
But let's go back a little bit. So we're not I mean, people want to complain like, oh, I can't believe you put people here. I can't believe you put people there. But you didn't just like arbitrarily, NYPD didn't arbitrarily go, I think it'd be really good for us to monitor this.
Right.
They did that based on the analytics, correct?
They did it based on analytics and population metrics and things like that. I mean, again, we're talking about a guy that took the NYPD to a whole different realm, and people were scared, and rightfully so. But one of the things that was genius about the program, they took an NYPD detective and a sergeant, and they placed them in every major city around the world, which continues to this day. So if you can imagine London or Paris, which were high threat cities for many reasons and many years, we have now an NYPD detective sitting right next to the actual intelligence officer of that major city, and we're getting information in real time. Not 3 days later in a cable. Hey, and by the way, be on the lookout for people that are videotaping in a subway station but not getting on the train. Like, so it was a different mindset. Like,
it just sped everything up for y'all.
Totally, and it created a lot of friction because the FBI was doing that, but they really, again, as I say, they sucked at their job.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is, I think when you do that type of work, those agents that are assigned there, and I mean no disrespect, I think most of the line agents that I've seen are like exceptional human beings and are really, really good at what they do. The problem I see though is when you assign somebody that doesn't live there and doesn't own the real estate that they're on, it totally changes the way that they do their job. And what I've seen in deployments overseas is a lot of the government employees that are coming over there are not doing it because they want to get better at what they do. It is just a step on a set of stairs to go to where they ultimately want to end up, and they're not owning the real estate.
I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more.
So you have this, the volume of information that you're getting from all these different entities, how did that work?
Well, so I had 8 detectives assigned to me.
Okay.
Each detective was required to have at least 7 or 8 physical contacts with real human beings every day. So we're not talking about random people. We're talking about, hey, this is an issue. This is the type of person that would have access to the information that could possibly prevent another terrorist attack. These are the people we need to talk to. That's right. And so now, if you can imagine 8 detectives going out and having 8 to 10 human contacts each day, and you take that information and you, whether it's a license plate, phone number, address, and you start jamming that into a computer, which had basically like 200 possible terrorists in the United States to like now we have over 1,000 just in New York City organically. So, and again, now it's real human intelligence. The NYPD Intelligence Division, again, I'm saying this, and I'm happy to debate this with anybody, is the Google repository of human intelligence, all things counterterrorism, human intelligence, period. And we now own this information.
Because the reason for that is that is a grassroots, on the ground, not dependent on unvetted information or anything else. That is like you actually inputting information, and as it goes in, it's vetted throughout.
Yep.
It's not, hey, I just got a tip from this person, I need to go run over and do this. It is like a, I don't know the best way. It's almost like a snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes clearer and clearer. And to me, it's more the clarity at the end of it is phenomenal.
Oh, it's amazing. And then now you take the actual law enforcement side of intelligence officers, and then now you create a whole analytical section which didn't really exist before. And now you have all these analysts that are pouring over this information. And you do an RFI. It could be anything. Like I want to find. I'm just using this as an example. I want to find a purple colored Honda Civic in Queens, and then narrow it down to not just Queens, but in Hollis, Queens. I'm just using that as a gross example, right? You submit the RFI, you get it back.
So what is the RFI? Request for intelligence.
Request for information or intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you have all this at your fingertips. Now I'm horrible at computers.
Right.
I can write an email and I know how to move around the mouse and things like that. But if you told me, Chris, I want you to be an analyst or work a financial crime, I would say absolutely not. That stuff
can you let me interview the person once you figure out?
Yeah.
Let me interview 3 or 4 people and I can get you some information.
I'll type you up some notes and then you can go from there. But if you want me to sit down there and do that, I cannot do that.
So on those veins, and I know we're not going in order, but like for me, my brain works this way best. So taking the information that you had and the intelligence model that you had from that, I want to talk a little bit about what you did overseas. But before we get there, what I want to do is I want to talk about, so when you worked with that knowledge that you have there, I'm sure NYPD is doing even more things with all the technical information and everything else they have. So what in law enforcement now, because I do have strong opinions, and you're in law enforcement still, which I think is phenomenal. That, I just think one of the things that that is lost on people is the desire to serve for people like you. That, you gave all this time, you served your country with the Marine Corps, you served all these different, in all these different entities. And so like for me, after you finish that, you still look at something and go like, hey, there's a need. What can I do to make this better? You know what I'm saying? And yeah. I think that's lost on some people, is like they never kept. I think there's a lot of people that are in public service that aren't public servants. And so for me, I want to transition a little bit with the way law enforcement works now. I still don't think we've learned that same lesson that y'all have learned. Does that make sense? Like, when you talk about the process that y'all used, I think you have a lot of people that, like, some are collecting technical information. They're doing search warrants for phones. They're getting information. But there's really no machine to like, hey, let's go collect this information. Because that, to me, what we do in law enforcement, I think is we traditionally go, okay, I'm going to drive around in a police car. If I bump into somebody, because, you bump into somebody and hopefully that information is going to turn out. And it all depends on who the person is that takes the information. But if you have that person that is directed out there and they're like, hey, I want to collect this information, then they are probably, when they're out there looking for that information that the person may or may not have collected properly, that information is probably going to pop at some point and it's going to give you a direction. So in law enforcement, what can we do now to do a better job of collecting information? So
one of the things, I did a lot of training. I was a trainer pretty much for 10 years on and off. And one of the things that people overlook, now everything is, your whole world is in your cell phone.
Right.
But, so you pay through your phone, you communicate through your phone, obviously, you get directions from your phone. back in the day, one of the things that I learned, again, somebody taught me. I didn't invent this criminal intel cycle and counterterrorism intelligence cycle, is a pocket litter and trunk junk.
Okay.
So you would be amazed if you went through somebody's wallet of what you could find in there. But people would say they'd look for the drugs, the obvious things, drugs. Okay. And there's no drugs. So here's the wallet. If there was money and you had to account for the money and separate the money because it was, you weren't vouchering the money, but you couldn't leave the cash in the wallet when you put the wallet with its personal property, things like that.
Right.
But things like a phone number or a business card or information written on the back of the business card. And people would be like, well, what's the value of that? I'm like, well, that's it. You don't know the value of it.
Right.
I'm not saying that I knew the value of this information, but I was able to learn how to collect it. So from the business card, I would put them, if they had business cards or bank cards, I'd put them face up, then I'd flip them over, put them face down. Certainly any kind of identification that they had. Scrap pieces of paper. I would look for the scrap piece of paper. Why are you keeping a scrap piece of paper in there? Well, you don't want to say this is Joe's How to Build a Bomb 101 school, of bomb making. So he's got a name down there or just a phone number. And you collect that information, and now all that information is being scanned into the analyst section, and you're like, oh, where is that guy? Like, now you get a phone call, like, where is this guy? Like, I want to talk to this guy. You know what I mean? And it's kind of sounds simplistic, but it's just basic things. One of the things that I would teach on tactical site exploitation is when you flip this house, I don't care if it's a stateside house or it's in a war zone, you want to think size-wise SIM card, because the SIM card is the key to the universe now. Okay. So it's evolved. But in the Arab world, again, I'm flipping back and forth. In the Arab world, again, I had to get culturally schooled up too on the Arabic and Middle Eastern mindset. They are meticulous accounting keepers. So they will still handwrite in ledgers things. Okay. Now, I don't read Arabic. I can't speak Arabic. I know a few curse words and things like that.
Right.
But that's the keys. That's the key right there. And so when we were doing these raids in Iraq, and I'm flipping back and forth from trunk junk and pocket litter to now like SIM card and ledgers, you would see they would itemize how they built the bomb, who got paid to emplace the bomb, who they kicked up to, everything. It's all in a ledger.
So that goes a transition. So you went to Iraq, and that's what you did, is hunt the IED makers. The military realized, hey, we're getting slaughtered out here. Let's bring in some people and start exploiting some of the information. And so that's what you're talking about. You're talking about going out and just so all that pocket litter, whatever you learned in New York, that transferred straight over into Baghdad.
100%.
And so talk a little bit about what your deployment into Baghdad looked like.
So they ended up looking at the problem, when I say the Joint Improvised Explosive Defeat Device Organization, JIEDO. So basically they decided we need to figure out how to stay left of boom, left of the explosion.
Right.
And up until that point, what was happening was the soldiers, unfortunately, were getting killed by IEDs, and then there would be like follow-on attacks. It was a mess. There was a huge propaganda campaign going on by the Al-Qaeda and franchise Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And so they came up with this program and said, why don't we attack this like a criminal organization, see if we can find the bomb makers, see if we can find the financiers and things, and try and eliminate this whole issue.
Okay.
So that's actually what happened. So initially when I got to Iraq, and I know we had this conversation before, the first iteration, the first 6 months, the guy that was there was not good. He didn't have communication skills. He couldn't sell this program, this concept, because up until then it was a concept.
But just so it's understood, is that when you're assigned as a contractor, you still have to attach to a regular Army,
correct,
military. And so your intel person from your contract has to communicate with their intel people, or you're never going to leave the wire.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so your guy didn't do a great job.
The first guy, he did not do a great job. Fast forward, we had this amazing individual named Matt Pacino. My book is in memory of Matt Pacino. I wear his memory bracelet. I talk about him often whenever I'm interviewed about his genius.
So take about 3 or 4 minutes and just talk about him and what he did for y'all, and just what a true American hero looks like?
Oh my God. First of all, he could have been on the cover of GQ magazine. An incredibly handsome guy, Italian, thick, black, wavy hair, bright blue eyes, from Boston, Massachusetts, big Italian family. Super smart guy, great sense of humor. Was a special forces operator. His MOS was an 18 Fox, so he was a true intelligence officer. He spoke enough Arabic to get by, but he was his greatest asset was his personality and and being able to engage people and win people over. Like, hey, let me help. I'm here to help. Let's help each other.
Not I'm the smartest person.
Right.
Just probably one of the most, like, from what I've read in your book, like probably one of the most capable human beings you've ever dealt with, but probably one of the most humble.
Absolutely, 100%. And he was able to win the Army over and build the trust with the relationship. So if you can imagine doing an operation, I did 110 operations, the majority of them, probably 85% of them, with Matt as our 18 Fox guy.
That says a lot right there.
91 high-value captures, high-value target captures,
based on
tier 1 and tier 2, based on Matt's target.
So like from my standpoint, when you look at that, just what kind of force multiplier we're talking about? You're not getting a bomb maker, so that you're not taking one person off the battlefield. You're taking the person that is killing American soldiers and multiplying, because they're not building one bomb.
No.
They're building multiple bombs.
No.
So 91 high value targets. Right. So like, I mean, when you look at that, as far as like the number of people that he saved and with the work y'all did, that's just phenomenal.
Oh, we went 2 months straight without an IED event in our area of operation.
And and how many did you have before y'all got there?
Daily.
I
would say daily, if not daily, every other day. Sometimes there would be a respite and then it would pick up again. But we're talking about soldiers being just totally killed. And we're talking about not just IEDs. Everybody thinks, oh, IED, it's just some homemade explosive device that just blows up. No, we're talking about Iranian EFPs and the technology that was being shipped in from Iran. And the idea behind this thing, I don't want to get too technical, but basically what happens is there's an explosion and it's in a cone device and it inverts itself. So you could have the biggest, greatest level armor.
It's a penetrate.
It goes through one side and comes out the other. And so there's the shock wave effect, there's the spall effect, and then there's just the whole lack of oxygen just gets sucked right out right there. So basically, some of the people, unfortunately, you would look at them, not to be gruesome, but they would be completely intact. But it was the shock wave that killed them.
Soft tissue injury.
Just killed them on the inside.
So, like from my standpoint, so this guy, Matt, comes over there and gets y'all operational, and like y'all are changing the battlefield. I mean, just talk about that. What did it feel like to be part of something like that?
The adrenaline rush, and I'm sure, from your law enforcement career, like doing a search warrant, multiply that times 10, because you know that there's a bad guy. And this isn't some shoplifter at Walmart. This is somebody that killed soldiers. So you have a really vested interest. So it looks like we find the guy, we fix the location, we have a security cordon set up, we have EOD personnel, we have bomb sniffing dogs, which I know you have great familiarity with. We have an intelligence officer, we have a TEO, technical exploitation officer, who can download software. We have bats and hides, we can fingerprint these people and iris scan them on the battlefield. And then you have my part, which is to take them into the bathroom and talk to them and explain to them it's in their best interest to tell me who the next person is in this food chain. And most of them, a shock probably to people in your audience, they didn't want to give information willingly. And then what would happen would be Matt would be out there, and he knew what to look for in terms of things that could either be used as a physical object or a psychological motivator. And he would tap on the bathroom door, and they knew not to tap on the bathroom door unless there was something significant, because they knew that was going to break my momentum with this guy in engagement. And they would hand me something. They would hand me a cell phone, or they would hand me a SIM card, or they would hand me a plug-and-play IED device, and then I would just collapse this guy psychologically. And sometimes this went on for over an hour and a half, to the point where the sweat was coming down my back and filling up and puddling and pooling in my boot.
This is not cool.
It's brutal. It's brutal. But getting back to your, the level of adrenaline and motivation and the level of satisfaction saying, yeah, I'm not solving the world, but I got you. And you're done.
But every morning that you're going to chow, you're looking at across the table and you're like, that could be somebody that wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for the work we did. And I think that to me is significant. Just like, so talk a little bit, any operations when you're in Iraq that stand out. I think it's important to say, say his name again, say the name of Matt's name and like the service that he provided. Like, I think it's so important for us to like recognize, like he acted as a force multiplier. Yes. Cause he was eventually killed where? In Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan.
And so, but like his legacy are people that got to go home to their families. And that's your legacy too. But he never stopped serving. No. He was, and I think that's what's so cool about people that we have on this show is like that their service doesn't really end. They always see the next thing that they can make better. So it's kind of a good segue into, so you do that deployment, and I think like what you said is the operational tempo changed because did Matt rotate out?
Matt eventually rotated out, and the team was never the same. And then they brought in another guy, and he was a nice guy, but he was not Matt.
You get spoiled, don't you?
Yeah, because it becomes an addiction.
You got that tempo and it's rolling, rolling, and you pull one piece out of it and it just collapses.
And you're doing a burn, like a 24-hour burn, and you're like, yeah, I'm physically exhausted. I was 48 years old at the time while all this is going on, but I was invigorated and I was enthusiastic. And then I had a great interpreter who could read my mind, and so that there was like almost like no delay. It was like almost.
It wasn't awkward. It's almost like ice skating. Like you were working as a team, and like you knew what they were doing. He knew how to. And I think that's one of the hardest things is when you're operating in another environment. You can be really angry, but if they don't deliver really angry, you just waste a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so, talk a little bit about what it was like. What finally got you to the point of like, I need to come back home. And, as far as the deployments that you went to with the IEDs, what made you decide like, hey, this is a good time for me to find another way to serve?
Well, the program was winding down, and like I said, Matt had left. He went back to his SF unit, Special Forces unit. And they had asked me to extend and stay. And I said, yeah, I'm here 15 months. I got to go home. And, but what kind of prompted that was the fact that President Obama had come into office, and he changed the whole status of forces agreement. So what we were able to do pre-Obama, that had changed, and they wanted to actually try and implement like a Western type of criminal justice system, which was really laughable because we're in a war zone. And it's all back to this nation building crap, which is all crap.
You can't build a nation out of tribes.
No. And so it was a combination of Matt leaving and this. And again, I can't sit still. Like, I don't want to be. Some people would be content to sit around and collect a paycheck, and do nothing.
A good paycheck.
Yeah, a very good paycheck. But not me. I want to feel like I'm doing something productive with my life, and this was not productive.
So you come back, and then at some point once you come back, you decide to continue your service. What triggered that?
Well, I did some training, and my specialty was interview and interrogation, but I kind of blended it with the tactical side, exploitation and evidence manipulation. But when Uvalde happened, I reached out to a friend of mine, and I basically said, what do I got to do to get back in law enforcement? Because I was disgusted by it. I saw the news. I heard the stories. People are standing around there. Kids are crying. I'm like, I don't know who these people are or how they sleep at night, but I knew that was like chilling to me. And I said to my friend, what do I have to do? And he said, well, you're going to have to go through the academy again.
A full police academy?
A full police academy.
And how old were you at that point?
62.
But you went through it.
I did.
And you graduated So you got like one of the top awards for physical fitness.
I got the Law Fit Gold.
Okay.
So at 62 years of age.
That's awesome. Kind of goes with that in my brain is how do we take the knowledge that you have and your ability to train people and use intelligence? How do we do that? And maybe this is a question that we probably talk for hours about, but I think about these school shootings. They all have a lot in common. How do we develop some kind of intelligence program or something? I know people throw around mental health, guns, all these different things, but I think if you start studying these, the types of children and people that get into these, it's never a surprise to the people around them. And so how would we get intelligence to address that?
Well, I think first and foremost, like you were saying earlier in the show, you got to recognize the problem and admit that there's a problem, and there is a problem. It is a mental health issue, but if you look at statistics, and again, that's why you have people that are in the our analysts that look at these things. There is a trend, and the trend is, unfortunately, it's been transgender people. It seems like the majority of some of these horrific things, to include potentially the shooting, the attempted assassination of President Trump at Butler, Pennsylvania. There's some whisperings. They refuse to release some of the other information about the Nashville shooting, all these other, mass
So
shootings.
we're not really getting to motive.
We're not. And again, if we're going to be honest about it, or the people that are doing the investigation, they're certainly not sharing that information. So like, in other words, you could be a local law enforcement asset and want to do the investigation, and you could be blocked out of it completely, and to include any interviews that were taken. And then, so what are you left with? You're left with somebody else's work product that's telling you what it is. And
it's pointing you in a direction that might not be the correct direction.
That's correct.
Because you haven't had a chance to vet
correct.
the information and figure it out.
That's correct. I mean, when you look at things like, as an example, which is the attempted assassination of President Trump, this guy has 2 phones that have international connections. He's flying a drone. He's on top of a building. There's multiple sightings. We could talk about law enforcement failures and things like that, but just from an intelligence standpoint, there's so much information after that could have been disclosed and has not been disclosed. So we don't know, was he working alone? Did he have help? Did he have financial support? Were his parents aware of this? Because there's been a complete blackout of all of that. And why there's a complete blackout of that, I don't know. I don't know. But that same thing happened with the Las Vegas shooting. There's a complete blackout of information about that. Like, nothing to see here. He had 2 caseloads of guns that people actually helped him load onto.
Somehow got all the way up to, what floor was he on?
Like 30 some odd floor, and it's over 1,500 feet away. Still the biggest mass shooting in history today. But nobody knew anything about this guy. I mean, again, you have to suspend disbelief. I mean, I'm from the world of, like, you got to prove this out. You got to look at all the information, but there's no information out there, not at least on open source information, about what really happened in these. And I'm just talking about 2, one with the president and one with 40 some odd people that are killed at an outdoor concert. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, like I said, I could do this all day. Cause I think your insights are extremely valuable, because I think we have access to so much unvetted information, and I think people will just want to, like, grab the first thing they see and run as far as they can with it. And, like, I think it's really cool that, like, you've vetted information and you've arrived at a destination that actually did something really, really great. Not just your time at NYPD, but also, like, taking that information and utilize it in a country we were, at war. We weren't really at war with them. I would say we had a war to clear it out. Mm-hmm. You can go into the dynamics and how that all worked. Talk a little bit about your book. You wrote a book, and like I said, we've got a copy of it here. And I do appreciate that too. Like,
sure.
Like I said, I read it on Nook, but, like, it'll definitely go in the library. Talk about your book a little bit.
Well, the book was is in memory, like I said before, of my friend Matt. The book took me 10 years to actually get it physically published. So I came home and I was frustrated, and I was telling the story just like I'm telling you the story. And depending on who the person was that I was talking to, especially if they were a military person, it's very relatable. And but there's aspects of the law enforcement side that are very relatable too. So there's two things. But the main reason why I wrote it is because of the frustration I had and the unnecessary death that was going on over there. And one of the things that really frustrated me, and I know we spoke before I came out here today, is the amount of money that was being confiscated at these places where people were either the bomb maker or the financier or the logistics person or the emplacer, whoever they were in this food chain, was staggering. And it was $100 bills in serial number to order, brand new, uncirculated. And so the question becomes then, obviously, well, who gave them the money? Was it an intelligence source that gave them the money? Was it a special forces community? Was it the what they call CERP money, Commander's Emergency Response Program money? Mm-hmm. Was it the CIA or FBI? I can't even tell you how many people said, I'm working for the CIA or I'm working for this group or that entity. And again, I can't prove or disprove that, but if I call and ask you, that point of contact, hey, are you guys working with so-and-so?
The source, right.
And they deny it, well, that's where it ends. I'm going to call the guy a lie. I don't know if it's true or not.
You just know that you can't track the money.
But the money became the reoccurring theme with these raids. So that makes people uncomfortable because now they want to know, and again, going back to the book and the experience, why is it that a bunch of ragtag 40-year-old men are out here finding this money, finding high-value targets, and when we have this whole intelligence operation apparatus with CIA, DEA, ATF, and to include a special forces community, why is it that they're rounding up more high-value targets than us? And we've been in country for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Because they're doing a tour. That's it.
So that was the impetus. That's why I wanted to write the book, because I wanted people to know about Matt, but I also wanted to know that there were a lot of amazing people that were doing a lot of amazing things, as you pointed out, did save a lot of lives. There's no way to quantify how many lives they saved, but as I say, we went 2 months with not a single ID. And the small arms fire was pretty much done and over with. I got there in February of 2008. So that was not the primary killer of the soldier over there. It was the IEDs and in particular the EFPs from Iran.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the number of families and service members that you kept safe and kept them unharmed, and appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time very much too.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.